Hello and welcome to Inside the Bot. I'm your host, Jason DeZamba. Before we get started in today's episode, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Let our team know we're doing a great job providing value for you. Today, we're going to talk about how to scale intelligent automation and the role of organizations in this whole RPA intelligent automation context. We have a great guest today. We've got the one and only OG. He is the CEO and co-founder of IAC. Welcome, OG. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, happy to have you. And I wanted to start today with something that you shared on LinkedIn. And I was when I saw this, I'm like, man, dude, this guy is epic. So if you tell us, so you like to have a little fun, and it looks like a bit extreme. So you went to Morocco. We've got a photo. So tell us about this experience, Stream. If you could tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, so this was pretty cool. We actually went with a bunch of friends in the south of Morocco in the desert, and we had a motorbike, dirt bike, and we actually learned how to surf sand with motorbike, right, which was quite challenging. So this is a beautiful place, amazing. We actually we got a sandstorm as well, which was quite crazy. You couldn't see anything, and you had to drive the motorbike, and we were actually using GPS because we couldn't see anything. But cool, a bit dangerous because it's quite tricky, but it was a great experience. Yes, definitely. I'm advising everyone who can ride a bike to do that. It's really
I
really cool.
I used to ride. That sounds awesome. It reminds me of two things. It reminds me of Mad Max, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dune. Have you ever seen them?
Of
They made
course,
an
I love June. Yes,
It's-
yes.
did you see any earthworms out there that you get the chance to ride them there?
Almost. I mean, it's
Yeah.
sand everywhere, and it's really really crazy. It's like being on the moon. Crazy.
Nice. Well, like Dune, they have the spice, so like the essence of their people. So let's get into the spice of today. So before we kick off the meat of let's do a little background. So if you can tell folks, so maybe 30 seconds about your role as CEO and founder of Intelligent Automation Corp and the work that you guys do.
Sure. So we are a team of specialists really focusing on delivering outcome and results in the space of intelligent automation, which is the combination of automation and AI, right? So that's really what we do, and there's two big differences here versus I would say what you can typically find in the market. One is the fact that we are really agnostic when it comes to technology and vendor. So we advise, the client to make sure that the return on investment will be there. And the second is we are really what I call outcome-based focused, which is we only get paid when we deliver results. That's what we do. That's what at the core of the DNA, of the company. And yeah, I'm leading the company as the CTO there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you guys have skin in the game, and so you're invested with your clients to perform. I mean, that's just it holds you accountable. So what type of clients do you typically work with?
Yeah. So our typical client is, I would say, Fortune 3000. So half a billion and above. The reason why we target large clients is because we like to find large pool of activity that we can automate and optimize. And that's really what we are shooting for. Having said that, this outcome-based model, this result-oriented approach can also be applied to the SMB space, right? So I would say there's some other service providers, some other vendors that are also applying those concepts on the SMB space. But our core focus is really to optimize, let's say, the IT department, the HR department, the finance department of a large Fortune 3000 company.
Yeah, and then working with companies like that too, they're larger, so they just have more data to work with. That makes it just,
Mm.
what if we're talking about AI, they need large data sets to do something useful. So you can use automation for a smaller company, but you have a lot more to work with on that scale.
Yes,
Nice.
yes.
So I know that question for you. So do you find that when there's folks in the market that already have automation, they have RPA, but do you think a lot of folks now are prioritizing the technology over the outcome?
Yes, so that's a very good question. Um, there's a tendency, and it's you can understand that, right? This is a technical environment. There's a lot of technical people technical people, they love technology, they love tools. They sometimes they they fall in love with technology, right? And I think the mistake here is to look at intelligent automation as a technology centric type of conversation, right? So what I always say is you got to really have a business view, and you need to understand what will be the business impact, and you need to really articulate the outcome and baseline the environment so that you really understand, what's in, how does that impact the P&L, how does that, improve the customer experience. This is really key. That's why we do this. We do this because we want to have an impact on the business, right? So that's really, really important to understand. And once this is all defined, decided, and very crystal clear, then you can talk about the technology. Then you can select correctly what technology you need to do the job. And very often, right, I see people, they start with the tool and they try to articulate, the entire motion, the entire program around the tool that they had initially. And I think this is a strategic mistake.
And you have some steps here for folks to not take that path, that reverse path, because what really they want to know is how do you scale with this technology and how do you create these outcomes? So we've got the first one that I want to ask you. So what you've said in the past is your company, I see you guys are multi-vendor, you're vendor agnostic. So why is this key to partner with an agency like yours that is vendor agnostic?
Yes. So again, to carry on around what I said, right? So what you do typically in a program or a project that is targeting a given department and injecting technology is that you typically start with it's a three-step approach. You start with a discovery. There, it's all about data, collecting the data, doing the analysis of the data, trying to identify where the opportunities are, how big are they, and how you want to prioritize that. Then you go into building the solution. That's where you inject the technology and where you build the solution and you deploy it. And then the last part, which is, not many people talk about it nowadays, but it will come. It's the automation ops, which is running the technology, making sure you don't have any leakage, you don't have any operational issue, right, with your digital discovery. You typically have a lot of data, especially if it's a large department, a large company, and you cannot upfront understand where the opportunity will be until you have correctly analyzed the data. So you apply some data science, because very often the data is unstructured or semi-structured, so it requires a bit of skills to do that. But the point here is you cannot show up with a screwdriver and look for places where you're going to be using it. You don't know what tool you're going to be using until you've done the analysis. So having a vendor agnostic, a technology agnostic approach, and having a data centric approach in the discovery phase is absolutely critical, so that you don't have any notion of where you want to go. What you're looking for is based on the client environment, the client data, and the client business. You look for the consolidation point where there's a lot of people doing something that is, that can be potentially automated. You map that to existing use cases that you've done in the past, and then you end up with, here is my opportunity. And only after then you can start looking at, here is the tool I need, here is the vendor I need, that will allow me to deliver the result and achieve a decent return on investment.
Yeah. So from that, do you think people are making a mistake? They get excited about the technology and then they try to treat it like a hobby. Like for RPA, for instance, they say, "Oh, we want to automate something," and then they just send an employee to go, in a weekend learn RPA, and they don't do all these steps. They don't do this. It sounds
Mm,
like to me, it sounds like a lot of work, but it's important work because that instructs all of the future decisions, like you said, which partner, which technology you're going to use. But
yes.
when starting, for those that the CEOs and CFOs that are looking at the P&L, they're looking at, does RPA make sense? Should they not do it on their own starting off?
Yes, so there's a few things here. With a couple of I think very, very important things. So first, should they do it on their own? What we know and what research is telling us is that the best model when you are starting something that is new, that is, something that is going to transform your environment, that the best setup is to have both internal teams and external teams working together, right? If you only try to do it with your own people, you typically are going to have some gaps in terms of skills. You're also going to have a lack of, let's say, external knowledge, market knowledge. The experience will only be, what you have in house, and you might be lacking, let's say, what people have done in other areas, in other industry, or within your industry for other people, right? So I think there's great value here in having a win-win combination of internal resources, because again, remember, this is a critical skills, and you want your own resources to capture those skills, to grow, and to be in charge of your own destiny, because this is so strategic. It's so part of your core digital transformation that you want to have this capability. But at the same time, you need to have this external help that will, let's say, help you make the right decision, avoid the mistake, right? So that's for me the ideal situation, where you can find a partner that will allow you to do the right thing while you are building the skill in house, so you can really be in charge, right? Back to the other point that you mentioned, right? So when the only thing you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So that's why you don't want to start with a piece of technology. Although obviously, people are really focused on building and building and building. I think we are over this, phase where we can play with technology, this innovation phase, and we are really into the scaling phase, into the outcome phase, into the industrialized phase, where the CFO is looking at it, is expecting some return, is expecting to see the impact on the P&L, right? So again, what I have to say here is, make sure that you partner with the right people so you avoid the mistake, and make sure that you don't do that basic mistake of jumping on, I want to build stuff, right? No, you're gonna want to get your pipeline clean, well prioritized, well identified, so you know exactly where you're going to have the biggest impact and the biggest return on your investment.
A lot of great points in there, OG. Thank you. I love that. Have a clean pipeline. I don't think I've ever heard anyone phrase it like that. So there's just a lot of housekeeping to do before you get started. So one thing, so when they do all this, when they have a clean pipeline, they work with a partner that has their niche experience. How often, from your perspective, what you see at ISC, how often do their processes change because of automation?
Yeah. So there's different, let's say, type of environment, and you have people that are very willing to change, some people that are more resistant to change, right? So obviously, when you analyze an environment, you get the data, you do the discovery. Sometimes you do task mining, sometimes you do process mining. Sometimes you are lucky enough to be able to plug into an existing data lake, and you have all the data. The point being here is, you are going to discover a whole bunch of opportunity. First of all, not all those opportunity will be automation related. Some will be related to other things. Maybe you can further lean your process. Maybe you can do some other type of organization change and optimization, right? So in context of the conversation of today, let's say at least 50% of what you are going to discover is not going to be automation related, and you can action that through different let's say levers. But for what is automation related, the point here is, yes, you can automate as is. This is a typical conversation, right? Automating as is versus transforming, simplifying, leaning, optimizing, and then automate, right? We typically advise, when we try to automate, we typically advise the clients to consider, optimization along the way. And frankly, unless, there's very specific constraint, clients are not reluctant to inject a little bit of change in the process, right? As long as it's not too overwhelming for them in terms of size and impact. So the advice here is always the same, right? Simplify, optimize, lean, everything you can do, and then automate. If the client cannot, for whatever reason, then we will automate as is. The key point here is the automation rate, which is how much you can automate. 100% of a process automation rate being 100%, meaning you automate everything, 50% meaning you only automate half of the workload. The automation rate is going to be much higher if you have a chance to modify and tweak the process. If the client is willing to let you provide input and to let you help optimize. And by the way, there's a lot of tools, task mining tools, process mining tools that are allowing you to really have a very clean understanding of what the existing process is and to really understand where are the opportunity to to optimize that process so that it is more automation friendly, and therefore your automation rate will be much higher.
So the perception of automation, as it's been lately, is that there is great potential, but there seems to be a lot of risk. There's a lot of investment. Maybe the ROI is not there, and there's a discrepancy between the cost to implement automation with a Gen 1 platform compared to a Gen 2 platform. So,
Mhm.
how do organizations transform risk-free?
Yes, so that's a really big topic, I think, because there's many reasons why you as a company trying to introduce automation, let's say RPA, or having you end up having to take a lot of risk in many different aspects, right? So there's financial risk, obviously, with the software itself, the cost of the software ending up on the shelf, or even if it's a subscription being underutilized, the cost of the implementation itself, right? With the service provider, you implement something, it does not yield the expected impact, and therefore, that's a risk. The operational risk that you are taking as well, right? By basically displacing human and introducing digital workforce, and then not potentially not running the digital workforce correctly enough so that it will impact your business, because the digital workforce is becoming business critical. So the point here, and if I stick to, I think the big item here, which is the financial risk, right? The idea is that we are now, as I said before, in an industrialized phase, which means that we know exactly what we are doing as vendor and as service provider. It's not the first time we automate in the HR department an employee onboarding process, for example. Just as an example, we've done that multiple times for multiple industry, multiple region, using multiple, let's say, underlying tools. So you have enough knowledge and enough understanding so that you can basically know exactly uh, what to expect or how it will go, right? And as a customer, you should be starting to demand, okay, now do I need to take all the risk, or can I start sharing the risk with my provider, my vendor, or my service provider? And the service provider and the vendors that understand that, they are basically dropping the cost of their licenses. They are basically dropping, the risk that the customer has to take, because they go with a what I call an outcome-based model. So you only get paid if you deliver results. This is really allowing to de-risk the client, so that the client doesn't have to bear all the costs, doesn't have to take all the risk, and it's a true win-win situation that you establish here between the client and the providers. And I think this is the future, right? The future will be de-risking the client, sharing the risk, establishing win-win. And I think we are now in a phase where this is entirely possible to do most of the time, because most of the time we are working on automation that we've done before somewhere, maybe with slightly different environment, slightly different tool, but in the HR space, in the IT space, in the financial space, in the supply chain space, we have done this automation multiple times across multiple industries.
So I want to learn more about this outcome-based model. We've talked a little bit about it, but let's go in more depth about how did you guys create this? Why does it exist in the market? A little bit more in depth, because I know you alluded to it, but let's hit it hard. Why is this the way for the future for automation?
Yes. So, few things. This is not new, and this exists in many other areas, many other markets, right? It is new inside our market, which is let's call it the intelligent automation market. And the reason why it was not used in the past, it's because, again, it's fairly risky. When you try to automate something, you don't know what to expect. The technology is not, Gen 1 technology is, in the innovation phase, just at the beginning. You don't have enough understanding of the environment to be sure that you are going to be able to deliver results, right? So you would go with a typical T&M model, times and material. You would go with, a scope of work where you define the solution, and what you would sell to the client is the design of a technical solution, the implementation of a technical solution, and running the technical solution, right? You don't really commit on selling result. You commit on building, deploying, and running a piece of technology. I think nowadays we are really, really able to go above and beyond that model. We are really, really able to basically frame a contract where we contractually commit on results. The right way to do that, and I've explained that multiple times, right? The right way to do that is to correctly have a baseline the environment, have a data-driven approach to baseline the environment, and to really understand how you can improve that baseline and really make a difference from a result standpoint. Forget about the technology, forget about the solutioning, forget about the infrastructure, forget about the cloud, forget about the support. Focus on, here is my business running at that KPI. How do I move the needle on that given KPI? Because if I do that, I know that my business will be doing better thanks to the implementation of technology. Once you have framed that, then you can, and you are confident as a provider, as a vendor, that you can make it happen, then you can sell that as a contract to your client. And why is this the future? Because again, it's so obvious that as a client, I would rather sign a contract and pay for result rather than pay for a piece of technology that maybe will end up somewhere not doing what it's supposed to do.
I love that. Yeah, more security. That's what CEOs want. Looking at that P&L, they get a little ah. So what about the investment advice in new technology? Because you said something, you said something earlier about, we've talked about it, using technology that you already have. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you put that into context? Because this applies directly to those organizations. Maybe they're already on a Gen 1 and they have a combination. They have a Gen 1, Gen 2 platforms. They need to maximize what they have. Understand that. So we can talk about that. But also, what about the new companies that are looking to get into this space of intelligent automation? How do they invest or maximize what they have? If you could address those points.
Yes. So, so first of all, and I think it's fairly logical, right? When you try to implement intelligent automation in an environment, especially if it's a large environment, uh, you have to understand the environment itself. You have to understand the investment that have been made in the past, and obviously, you need to try to leverage those investment as much as possible. So if there is a large ticketing system that is in place, if there is I don't know, a large HR system that is in place, you really want to understand those systems and you want to leverage the capability built in those systems before you add any other technology on top, right? There's typically for large corporation, there's typically a lot of technology. There's typically too much technology already in-house. There's also a lot of legacy, too much legacy in-house, right? So I would say rule number one, let's try to understand the client's environment. Let's try to leverage as much as you can the investment that have been made. Now, if you have to introduce something new, or if you want to optimize the return on investment, sometimes you have to introduce a new piece of technology and you potentially have to displace a legacy piece of technology, or sometimes you want to have a new piece of technology coexist, kind of a multi-vendor strategy together with an existing piece of technology, so that you really can, understand the benefit of that new piece of technology, and potentially over time, make a decision. But I think sometimes it is required, right? This multi-vendor situation is sometimes healthy for the client to really open their eyes and see that there's other ways to do things. For smaller business, I would say, or for new business, I would say, it's very typical, right? Mobile phone, right? Some countries that didn't have the old wire infrastructure, they went straight to Wi-Fi, and they had a Wi-Fi wireless infrastructure implemented in no time because they didn't have to handle legacy. Well, you don't have legacy and you are clean, right? You can make the right decision. So for the one that are starting new, I would strongly advise, to really keep return investment in mind and to select a vendor that obviously is providing all the capability you need to automate, but more importantly, is doing it within, the expected return on investment, right? There's still far too many projects nowadays that are failing to deliver a positive return on investment.
It sounds like from what you're saying that the small and middle-sized companies, they have a huge advantage because they can start clean and they in the ways that you've outlined, they can start with these steps that you have and they can be ahead and be more efficient than a lot of these larger organizations that have invested, millions over the last few years in automation.
100%. 100%. That's the beauty of being new and small nowadays. You can look you can look big and old very quickly because you can use all those cool technology, and more importantly, your cost structure is going to be very lean if you make the right decision, and you can move really fast, right? So I would say that is why there's so much digital transformation happening in the large company that are full of legacy, and they have to, it's a matter of survival, they have to implement that, they have to do the automation. Actually, we know that a large chunk of those company that are basically not doing digital transformation, including automation correctly, will probably not survive, right? So again, if you're an SMB, you're brand new, you have a huge edge over everyone else because you can do it clean, fully integrated. You can do it, zero touch. You can do it with the right price point, with the right partner. You can really, really have an edge over everyone else.
It's a key point, especially now we've all experienced. We got through the whole pandemic, and it just my final question for you today is, in that context, do you think, and this can be small, medium, large size businesses, do you think from your experience that companies have been short-sighted with their goals? Have they been thinking short term to just to survive and not really thinking about the broader vision of where they want to take their organization?
Yeah, so I think there's two things here to look at. One is time, and the other one is what I would call bottom up versus top down approach, right? There's still company that consider intelligent automation as a short term bottom up approach, and it is definitely a core component of your digital transformation agenda, and it is long term and it is top down, meaning identifying small pockets of activity bottom up that are scattered all over the place and handling them really quick in a matter of weeks. Okay, that works, and that will give you some small benefit short term, but if you really want to really transform how you deliver, transform how you work, you got to have a top-down approach. You got to look at everything in your company. You got to select a whole department. You got to select a whole business process, and you got to really take the time to do proper discovery, proper build, and proper run. Right. So this is really really important. The short-term, bottom-up, small stuff scattered all over the place is not the way to really have a huge impact and really scale automation all across. Right. That's what I think.
Perfect. So to wrap it up, if you could, I know this will be might be challenged because we've covered there's so many points in what we covered today, and it applies to, as we've seen, so many businesses, small, medium, and large. But if you could, what are maybe a few takeaways? If anyone were watching this and they just saw this, last 10 seconds, what would be two or three takeaways that you'd like to tell CEOs that are looking and watching as an audience today?
Yeah. So number one, uh, I don't think doing it all by yourself is the way to go. I don't think relying 100% on the provider is the way to go. I think the right balance is, to have both internal and external resources working together. That's where you get the best outcome. Point number one. Point number two, don't fall in love with technology. Be technology agnostic everywhere you can. Be business centric everywhere you can, even if you are a CIO, even if you are a technical person. This is really really important. Point number three: think about this outcome-based model. Think about this result-oriented approach. Think about I want to buy result. I don't want to buy technology. I want to buy result. If you have those approach and you have a very healthy 50-50 internal external, if you have the capability not to fall in love with technology all the time, and to be agnostic, so you can really focus on ROI. And at the end of the day, you want to pay for result, not a solution. I think those are really key guidelines, and it will really help you achieve impact on your business.
Simple but powerful points. Well, you heard it here, OG. Those are great points. This man's got massive experience, as you can tell by hearing his words of wisdom. So, OG, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time, guys. See you next time. I'll make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And OG, we can find you on LinkedIn. And anything
Yes.
else you'd like to,
No,
any
you
other
can. Yeah.
places?
No. So IAC.ai is the website. We're on LinkedIn. Use the OG approved stamp. If you see around, that's me.
And this is an OG approved message, by the way.
It is 100%. It is.
Wonderful. All right. We'll see you next time. Thank you, OG.
Yeah. Bye bye.
All right. Bye now.